Hi, I'm Professor Green, and today we'll be talking about Chapter 9, Introductions and Conclusions. This is taken from the publicspeakingproject.org. Let's go ahead and get started. There are 6 major sections of this chapter. First, we're talking about the introduction to this chapter, so no pun intended, the introduction to the introductions. Then we'll be talking about the functions of introductions, attention-getting strategies, composing the conclusion, functions of the conclusion, and then preparing the introduction. So let's go ahead and get started. So as we know, first impressions count, right? The audience makes conclusions about the speaker even before they start speaking. As we started this course, within the first couple of seconds, you already made some conclusions about me, right? The way I speak, the way I dress, my background, whether I wear makeup or not, right? So when you step onto the podium, when you step into this virtual speaking area here on Zoom, when you step into the room, you're already making an impression upon the audience. So you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward and you're making the impression that you want to make, right? So that's what we're going to do talking about here in our introduction, not only the way we appear, but the first couple of things that we say. Here we have the functions of introductions. First, we want to have get the audience to want to listen to you, right? How does that work? So we're going to gain their attention and interest, and then we're going to gain their goodwill. What does that all mean? So gaining their attention and interest first starts off with body language. It goes a long way. The audience will know quickly if they want to listen to you, right? So part of the reasons why I do a lot of yoga is because I teach, right? I want a strong back. I want to relax my shoulders. I want to bring my shoulder blades back and together because this is a much more confident, a much more enthusiastic way to speak. If I was on Zoom and I was huddled over and talking to you like this, right, you most likely would not want to listen to me. So your body language, right? The way you hold your head, the way you hold your neck, the way you use your hands, very quickly will the audience know if they want to listen to you. Also, we talk about in this chapter, goodwill. Super interesting, right? Maybe things that you haven't heard about before. External and internal credibility. In my experience when teaching this course, people forget about the difference and they forget to include these things. It's so, so important. External credibility is what I think of as the harder part, right? This is going out and doing research or gain by association. So getting credible sources. It's going out to websites that are credible, not GQ or cosmopolitan.com, but going out to the Harvard Law School or the Harvard Business Review, etc. So doing that research. The next part is the internal credibility, which goes such a long way and is super easy. This is your body language. This is your personal experience or knowledge of the topic. That's why I encourage people to choose topics that are really important to them, important to their heart, because when they speak about it, they will be enthusiastic and then the audience will be enthusiastic to listen to them. So think about those as you go through and choose your topic. The internal and the external credibility, both are equally important. And now we want to help the audience understand you, right? That we want to first clearly state the purpose, right? Which we've spoken about in our chapter about creating our purpose statement and then our thesis statement. So you really want to tell the audience clearly what it is that you're going to be speaking about. And then here, preview the structure and the speech. So how you will develop the speech, an oral outline. This is circular and not linear because you will repeat the purpose in the conclusion. Right? So we always say, especially if you're in sales, right? You tell the audience what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you just told them, right? So you repeat 3 times throughout your speech the same thing because you want the audience really to go home and really have a good grasp on what it is that your speech is all about. Let's hop into the next slide here. Attention-getting strategies. There are a handful of these ones here, which are really fun to brainstorm and think about. So how to start off your speech. Do you want to tell a story? Maybe about, if you're talking about, I've had students talk about ramen as their informational speech and maybe telling a story about how you got so interested in ramen or maybe a story about the history of ramen. Then you're going to refer to the occasion potentially, right? Especially if you're giving a speech about, if you're giving a best man speech, then you want to refer to the wedding. Refer to recent or historical events, so relevant these days, right? Talking about COVID, talking about Black Lives Matter, something that we can all really relate to. Refer to previous speeches. This is so effective in public speaking because you'll hear a lot of speeches throughout the semester. And so if you refer to a colleague's or a friend's or another student's speech, it's so awesome because we've already heard that speech and now we can all connect to your speech a whole lot easier. Refer to a personal interest story. This is, going back to gossip or I should say also something about that cares, talk about the heart. You talk about Habitat for Humanity or an organization that you care about. That's a personal interest story. Using startling statistics, this is like a win-win, so easy, right? If I start off a speech talking about heart disease and that now I want to talk about and say that 80% of the people who die in this country die from heart disease, immediately do I catch your attention, right? Use an analogy, right? We all know what that is. Use a quotation, right? Super easy, super simple, really effective, right? If I were to start off my speech saying, I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King, right? Now we're all intrigued, right? She's going to be talking about her dreams or about your dreams. Super interesting. Ask a question, including rhetorical questions. So you're welcome to poll people on Zoom here. You're welcome to get answers, but you're also welcome to just start off and say, how many of you would like to be on vacation today, right? Question mark. Of course, who wouldn't want to be on vacation? And use humor. Personally, I'm not very good at humor. As I've mentioned before, my parents are from Switzerland and the Czech Republic, not really known for humor. But people who can use it effectively, it can be super, super effective. Good. Let's hop into now preparing the conclusion. I'm preparing the introduction. Sorry about that. I'm already hopping ahead here. So preparing the introduction. And as at the beginning of this chapter, I said that this would be at the end, if you noticed. So I did that on purpose to capture your attention, right? So if I go back, right? Let's go back a slide. So at the beginning of this chapter, I said that I'd be doing my introduction, functions of introduction, attention getting strategy, composing the conclusions, and going this way. But actually, I'm not. And I did that on purpose because I want to catch your attention. I want to see if you're truly listening. Did you question, oh my gosh, she's going to be talking about the preparing the introduction at the end? No, I'm not, right? So let's hop into it. Let's talk further about preparing the introduction. Construct the introduction last. The body drives the introduction and it should not overwhelm the body, right? So in the real world, we do the introduction last. We'd like to work through the body, really dissect it, really massage it, really think about what our 3 or so main points are going to be, and then we go back and create the introduction. That's in the real world. But in this course, actually, I have you do it reverse because I want you to first think about your 3 main points and then go out and do your research because it can be sometimes overwhelming to do your research and we don't have a ton of time. So I have you hand in your introduction and conclusion first so I can make sure that you're headed in the right direction, and then I have you go through and do your body. So, and actually there are 2 schools of thought as to how you do that. I agree with the book where you say you should do your body first, but in this course, we're going to have you do your introduction first. Great. So now we're going to make the introduction relevant, right? If the audience hears an introduction that lacks connection to the rest of the speech, they will have trouble following your main ideas, right? We've all attended speeches, and you'll probably hear a speech in this course that does that, and it's horrible. It's like nails on a chalkboard to my ears, right? Because I really want you to stay organized. I'm an engineer, right, by background. So I really need you to outline 1, 2, 3, what are your main points, and then talk about those in your body. I'm not going to talk about that too much because it's just a nightmare for me to hear speeches that are not organized properly. Be succinct, right? Expect to move quickly into the body after the introduction. Otherwise, this could be what's called an expectation violation. And I talk a lot about in this course setting the expectations of the audience, right? Because they can track it then. They can see exactly where you are in your speech as you go through your transitions, right? If you talk about your introduction too long, then then they're going to be like, wait, is she already or he already in the body? Is she already in the conclusion? Where is she? So you want to move through the body very quickly. I mean, through the introduction very quickly, right? That it should only have 4 or 5 sentences that we'll review further in this course. Write it out word for word and then memorize it for delivery because it is so important. As I've mentioned already in this course, we do our speeches extemporaneous, but we deliver our introduction and our conclusion word for word because it is so, so important. Good, let's hop into the next section. The functions of conclusions. Before I hop into this, I also want to reiterate what we talked about in organizing and outlining your speech, that your introduction should have just those 3, 4, 5 sentences, right? Your thesis, your preview statement, your introduction sentence, etc. So just making clear that it's clear and succinct, 4 or 5 sentences before you get into your body. Okay, let's hop into the functions of conclusions. Now we want to prepare the audience for the end of the speech. We want to have language cues such as, now we can review. Movement cues, physically moved back to the center of the room if you're doing this live. And in our last speech in this course, we're going to be doing it standing up, so you can use the full room. Or you can have paralinguistic cues, slowing the rate of your speech. You'll see that I do that very often at the end of our chapters. I slow down, right? I say, okay, are there any questions? Now we're getting ready, the audience ready for the questions and comments sections. Okay, no pun intended, right? I practice what I preach here. We want to also present any final appeals, asking them to change an attitude or simply understand your topic. Depending on your topic, you might have an informational or persuasive speech, right? This is a primacy and recency effect. People understand the first and last thing that you mention the best, right? That's just the way the brain moves, right? The first thing that you mention and then the last thing. You'll notice that here as we give our lectures, right? The first slide and the last slide are always an introduction to the chapter and then a summary of the chapter. So now the third function of the conclusion is to summarize and close, include a restatement of the thesis and a review of the main ideas of the speech. And we want to end always with a clincher, for example, a story, a humor, piece of humor, any one of those items that we talked about in the introduction. And last, appeals and challenges. These are requests or orders. So when we talk about the persuasive speech, we might have a call to action or something that we need the audience to do. Good, and all parts of the speech fit together, and the conclusions takes you right back to the introduction with an enhanced understanding of the topic. Good. Now we're going to go into composing the conclusion. There are 3 main points. The first point has some subpoints. We're going to prepare the conclusion, make sure that it works with the introduction, make sure that there's no false conclusions, it's not abrupt or sudden, only 10% of the speaking time, and write it out word for word, as I've mentioned already in this chapter. I do not include any new information, as this might confuse the audience, right? We don't know. If I were to start talking about here religion or Jesus Christ, right, that would be confusing because I did not talk about religion or Jesus Christ anywhere earlier in this chapter. Follow the structure, repeat the question, quote, or story from the introduction, which is a really nice way to bring it full circle. Great. Now we're done with our chapter on introductions and conclusions. Let me know if there are any questions. Feel free to email me, or we can talk about it if they're doing this live in class. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, stop the class. Again, I am Professor Green. This is the publicspeakingproject.org, and this is the course on public speaking.